So for the first time in our city's recent history, homelessness has gone down 2 years in a row, according to the annual point-in-time count.
Mayor Karen Bass touting progress on what's been a major focus of her tenure, homelessness. And while many Angelenos have noticed a drop in the number of people living on the streets, the extent of the progress really depends on where you live. LA Times' Doug Smith joined us with a closer look. Doug, it's always good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
And I have heard from lots of viewers, and depending on where they live, they're experiencing it differently now. And that's in part because from day one, Karen Bass declared a state of emergency on homelessness. Remind everybody what her approach was and why it was novel.
So she had two major approaches. One was Executive Directive 1, which was designed to streamline housing production. But she also had a street proposal, a street approach, which she called Inside Safe. And the idea was to target the really the largest, most egregious encampments and create temporary housing, interim housing in motels and hotels, and then encourage people to just take that housing and then clean up the encampment. And it's been successful in removing a lot of the most noticeable encampments.
All right, we have two new studies now, Doug, that you're going to help us break down. And it proves that it is so complicated to assess the situation, much less solve the situation. And some places saw dramatic improvements. Let's start there. Hollywood and Venice.
Sure. The Rand Corporation does a longitudinal study where they canvass 3 areas of Los Angeles, Venice, Hollywood, and Skid Row, over and over the course of time, so they can look at changes. And they found in their most recent survey, which they released a month or so ago, that the count in Hollywood had declined almost 50%.
Wow.
And in Venice, it had declined 22%. But in Skid Row, it was up 9%. And the reasons for that are really complicated. In Hollywood, you had a very strong movement created by the business and community and advocates for the mental illness who have created programs, and they've opened a new boarding care home and a shelter. And so you can see the effects of those efforts.
Meantime, we have our annual or semi-annual homeless count, right?
It's an annual homeless count called the point-in-time count, and it is a sort of a measure of homelessness county-wide usually in January. I think this year they took the count in February. And it showed a decline of 4% across the county this year, which was the second year there was a decline.
All right, let's talk about the good news and why certain things are working. You mentioned the people in Hollywood, but what else? Are these programs working, and are they working with all types of homeless people? Because there are different degrees of homelessness, is that fair to say?
Well, there are, and I mean, I think overall, when I first started covering homelessness, believe it or not, in 2015, there was 1 shelter bed for every 4 people who were homeless. And about 1/4 of the homeless population was sheltered. Because of Inside Safe, and the county has a similar program, that ratio has changed, and there's now 1 person in shelter for every 3 people who are homeless. And that's a big improvement. What I think the Rand study showed is that the way that people are getting into shelter is leaving behind some of the most vulnerable people. And they found that now unsheltered people who are living in a tent or some kind of makeshift shelter is no longer the dominant form, and people are just sleeping what they call sleeping rough. They're sleeping on the sidewalk or in a doorway, and they move around a lot then. And so it's harder and harder for the system to sort of account for them, find them, and provide them help.
And do we know, with either of these studies, how many people want the help or have applied for the help?
So Rand found that like 90% of the people they asked would accept help, wanted housing, but only a very small percentage, I think 13%, were on a waiting list. and something like 40% had been offered shelter, but only about half took it.
Before I let you go, recommendations?
So the RAND study made a couple of recommendations. One was it's everybody's recommendation: continue to streamline housing production, which has been the goal for 10 years, and we're maybe, because of Executive Directive 1, maybe we're getting a little better at that. But the other was that the system is going to need to adapt to the different demographics, with the less vulnerable people having taken advantage of the interim shelter or moving into housing, and the people still living on the sidewalk being more difficult to provide help to.
Doug Smith has been covering homelessness for the Times for a long time. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.